morning, everyone. Well, Ruta said you don't need to do a hard work to make a presentation. So I'm going to open the event with doing this hard work in not only the opening the event, but also presenting the statistics of the Lithuanian startup ecosystem. So my name is Miliauskienė. I'm the head of Lithuanian Private Equity and Venture Capital Association. This is the organization of the community which I suppose every startup would wish or would like to approach or would like to meet our community members, or even they already have done that in the past. So nevertheless, as a venture capital community, for a healthy venture capital community, obviously the flourishing and healthy startup ecosystem is paramount. The same goes for the flourishing startup ecosystem. The venture capital community is also a crucial factor. So having said that, I think we all know that Lithuanian startups are wonderful, and we already had quite a few good examples which made a global and significant mark in the world, such as Pixelmatter, Vinted, Yplan, and Trafi, you name it. Therefore, association with some of our community members, as you very well know, Boldcap and Practicapital venture capital funds, we actually carried out the survey where we were planning, we wished to gather all of the startups, to look into them, to see what they do, to see how successful they were, and obviously today I'm going to present that as well. So if you're a startup and if you're not in our database, so please do approach me after this this presentation. So my title refers to something what is a little bit hidden, and what I had in my mind that Lithuanian nation, or Lithuanians, are a very interesting nation. We usually worship the others, but usually we mistrust or depreciate ourselves. So what I wanted to say with this title, that we are leading, we are going into the right direction. Obviously, maybe we are not shooting out, but we are definitely on the right track. So let's kick off. I have about 30 minutes to do that, so it's quite an advantage. It goes without saying that money is pretty important to a startup. Although some of the people are saying that at the early stage of a business cycle or startups, money is not the key factor which leads to their success. However, I probably would say that we see the venture capital ecosystem, or private equity and venture capital players play a crucial role in sort of pushing the startup ecosystem forward. So as probably everyone would agree, this red dot right there, which shows the Israel statistics, is not an exception that today we link Israel as one of the most successful examples in the world as how to develop a successful venture capital, private equity market, and startup ecosystem. But again, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen just very easily. I have spoken with some of the venture capitalists some years ago, and they would say, like, a few decades ago, they would go to the American funds and American business people to attract the funds in Israel, and they would talk about themselves, turning themselves into a blue, and those people would they just laugh. He would say, like, come to Israel and invest into us. I'm talking about 2 decades ago. Today is a completely different landscape, obviously. So what Israel has today is about 70 active funds operating into the country. 20% of those are international with Israeli offices. Also, more than 220 international funds having operations in Israel. So the landscape is pretty mind-blowing. But again, as I said, that those funds are there for a reason, and obviously, one of the reasons are that a healthy and self-sustainable startup ecosystem in a country. So do we want to be there? What do you think? Yes, probably we do. Can we replicate the success? Or can we copy the success? No, we cannot. But I think that we have to find our own way and follow the, our own sort of suit to achieve our impossible. So back to our survey results. Now we, referring to the survey which we carried out, we counted that about 400, well, close to 450, I would say, startups are operating in Lithuania, which employ about more than 2,400 people. Probably we, you might question if you would ignore, the other sectors, which, signifies, this fraction of the pie. The most popular sectors among the startups in Lithuania would be, as you see, it's in ICT, in hardware, gaming, creative industries, and such. Also, the biotech, life sciences startups are becoming quite popular as well. According to the number of people employed in by the sector, the trend stays pretty much the same, such as ICT, hardware, so on. Now, over the last 10 years, more than 165 million euros have been raised by our startups. In total, there were about 180 deals. As you would see, probably from 2011, we see a sharp increase, which has been affected, as I would call them, by three elephants, which you know very well, like Whiteland, Vinted, and Gedger. But even though if you would extract those companies out of the data, you would see very nice positive trends, positive trend carrying in Lithuania. Now, investment in arena is dominated by the foreign venture capital firms. If you would look at your right, you would see that about more than 77% of the of the capital invested into the Lithuanian startups are is coming from a foreign capital. The rest is coming from a local capital. But again, in theory, as you very well know, in very early stage, for a startup, it's much easier, to attract the private funding in a local domestic markets. And as you see on your left, the key financing sources which are feeding into the startups are the angels, strategical investors, venture capital funds, and the others, such as 3Fs, like family, friends, and fools, the various EU grants, crowdfunding, and so on. So therefore, with this slide, what I want to say that in order to boost and to accelerate the startup ecosystem in Lithuania, we also have to think about our own, financing sources which are available in the country, such as venture capital, especially in the early stage, accelerators, incubators, and so on, where the startups can access the financing and which can lead them into growing into bigger countries, into bigger companies, where the foreign capital then kicks in and can invest bigger amounts into it. Now, talking about ourselves is nice, but as you know in the statistics, we always ask the question, well, you look good, but in comparison to what? So let's compare ourselves to our peers, namely Latvians and Estonians. So in plain numbers, Lithuanian startups outperform Baltic peers in the headcount. So if you would see, well, we are pretty much very close with Lithuanian and Estonian. And if you would compare the top sectors by the which employs the most employees, well, in Estonia, the key sectors which dominate would be the finance, ICT, in ICTs, such as sectors as e-commerce, social media, and network. Whereas in Lithuania, the trend is pretty much the same. Maybe the biggest chunk is taken by the e-commerce, gaming, hardware, and so on. And we also outperform in the number of startups with fundraising rounds. If we look into absolute numbers, the green bubble that represents us. So we see a very positive trend carrying on from 2000. Well, I would say 13, 14, 15, and hopefully we'll be quite successful by the end of this year as well. By the number of startups, again, as I said, we're pretty close to Estonian. And however, if we will look again, we will turn the statistics on, look into it from a different corner. So the number of startups per capita, per 100,000 inhabitants, we are lacking a little bit behind, I would say, quite behind our favorable Estonian peers. But it's good to be, the leaders. But again, we know where we have to stretch our belts a little bit. Estonians managed to raise the largest amount of capital. If we would take the from 2006, the data from 2006, Estonians managed to raise more than 280 million euros, whereas Lithuanians 165 million and Latvians 103 million euros. So finally, just to finalize with brief statistics, we as association, we are going to produce more data, more results which reflect what we found very recently. Actually, we just finalized the survey 2 days ago. The Lithuanian ecosystem, the startup ecosystem is growing, and the evolution of the ecosystem is very much normal. So as I said in the beginning, last year I actually lost the count of the how many times I have been asked, the question, when we are going to to be a next Silicon Valley, when we are going to be in Israel, why Estonians are doing, better than we do, and so on and so on. So the trends show that we are on a very normal path. We are following a very normal trend. And if you would remember the plain numbers, let's say in 2007 and 2008, around 5 new startups would be created in Lithuania, not to mention the new projects and spin-off which would be created out of existing companies. But whereas in 2014 and 2015, we see about 100 brand new startups entering the market per year. Pretty much the same situation when we are talking about the numbers of investments into the startups. Until the year 2010, we probably would see, rather random foreign capital investors, would come into the country. Whereas between 2013 and 2014, we saw about 40 of such deals, and in 2015 more than 70. In parallel, we saw the aggregated amounts of funds attracted into the startups in Lithuania also growing steadily. Probably Nothing Do Better is a good example, and as you all probably remember, one of the key successes, such as GetJar, not that many years ago already, proved to the local business people and entrepreneurs that the businessman in the field of high tech actually can, operate successfully, can enter the international market, can attract substantial investments into a startup, and compete on a global scale. So therefore, this example inspired a lot of young entrepreneurs and startups to establish their own business and actually made to believe that their creative and innovative ideas can be turned into the business. The other success factor was also that the government turned their attention to creating the healthy venture capital ecosystem in the market. So therefore, I hope, I'm sure that in a couple of years, the first slide which I saw, this red bubble can shift upwards to the right. So therefore, I wish you all to have, to create, to innovate, don't afraid to risk, and obviously to collaborate within the next 2 days and the years ahead. Thank you and good luck.